out! This way! Quickly now!
911, what is your emergency?
There's an elephant! It's attacking!
Sir, please stay calm. Can you confirm the location?
At the circus! Oh my god, it's loose! People are screaming! Get someone here! She's out of control!
Imagine for a moment the unthinkable. A life meticulously built, carefully nurtured, shattered in an instant. One moment, you're standing in the spotlight, the world an arena of cheers and applause. The next, that world rips apart, swallowed by a monstrous, unstoppable force. We tell ourselves it won't happen to us, that our world is safe, predictable. But what if the very thing you dedicated your life to, the creature you believed you understood, the bond you cherished, turned into your greatest terror? What if the joy, the connection, the love you felt for another living being could, in a terrifying heartbeat, become the instrument of your own destruction? This is not just a story of an animal attack. This is a chilling testament to the fragile line between control and chaos, between domestication and the wild. It's about a performance gone horribly, tragically wrong, a day when the spectacle of the circus morphed into a real-life horror show. And at the heart of it all, an 8,000-pound shadow, a creature named Tyke, and the man who, in his final moments, faced the ultimate betrayal of trust. The question isn't just what happened, but why? And could it have been prevented? Because sometimes the most dangerous show on earth isn't the one advertised, but the one no one ever saw coming. To truly understand the tragedy of August 20th, 1994, we must first understand the life that led to it. Not just Tyke's life, but the life of Alan Campbell. Alan was a circus man, born and bred into the sawdust and the spectacle. His hands knew the rough texture of elephant hide, the precise movements needed to guide a lion, the careful balance of a trapeze artist's grip. He lived for the roar of the crowd, the smell of popcorn, the nomadic rhythm of the big top. Alan wasn't just a trainer. He was, by all accounts, an elephant whisperer, or at least he aspired to be. His dedication to these majestic creatures was legendary within the small, insular world of the circus. He spent countless hours with them, understanding their moods, their unique personalities. He saw the intelligence in their eyes, the deep social bonds they formed. He believed, truly believed, that he could communicate with them, that he could forge a connection strong enough to bridge the vast chasm between human and beast. He'd been working with elephants for decades, a career that spanned multiple circuses, multiple continents. He'd seen them docile, playful, even mischievous. He'd also seen their immense power, their raw, untamed strength. But he'd always believed his training, his experience, his relationship with the animals would keep both them and him safe. It was a dangerous belief, perhaps, but one forged in a lifetime of calculated risks and successful performances. He was known for his calm demeanor, his patience, even in the face of an unpredictable animal. His fellow trainers respected him, looked up to him. He was a professional, through and through. His life was a perpetual roadshow, hotels, arenas, the constant packing and unpacking. But he thrived on it. The elephants were his family, his purpose. He knew their names, their quirks, their favorite treats. He'd spend early mornings in their stalls, talking to them in a low, soothing voice, checking on their health, observing their behavior. He was meticulous, detail-oriented, always ensuring the safety protocols were followed, or so he believed. The circus wasn't just his job, it was his identity, his home, his entire world. And at the center of that world, for the last few years, was Tyke. He was her primary handler, the one she saw most often, the one she performed with, the one responsible for her care and ultimately her control. He staked his reputation, his very life, on his ability to work with animals like her. He never imagined the price he would ultimately pay. And then there was Tyke, an African elephant weighing a staggering 8,000 pounds, standing over 8 feet tall at the shoulder. Her hide, a mottled gray, was thick and leathery, capable of deflecting all but the most powerful blows. Her tusks, though relatively short for an African elephant, were still formidable weapons, capable of goring, lifting, crushing. Her trunk, an incredible appendage of muscle and cartilage, could pluck a single blade of grass or tear a tree limb from its trunk. Tyke had been born in the wild, plucked from her natural habitat at a young age, forever severing her connection to the vast plains and complex social structures of a true elephant herd. This, animal rights advocates would later argue, was the foundational trauma, the original sin that set her on a path of distress. For years, she had been a performer, a cog in the massive circus machine, forced to learn unnatural tricks, to endure constant travel, and to live in an environment fundamentally alien to her species. African elephants are highly intelligent, highly social creatures. They live in matriarchal societies, forming deep, lifelong bonds with their family members. They communicate through a complex array of vocalizations, body language, and even seismic rumblings through the ground. They mourn their dead, show empathy, and possess remarkable memories. To take such a creature and confine it, isolate it, force it into a life of performance, many argued it was a recipe for psychological distress, a ticking time bomb. Tyke's behavior, even before that fateful day, hinted at underlying issues. There were whispers, rumors, incidents that had been downplayed or ignored. She wasn't always the docile, obedient performer the circus presented to the public. There were flashes of aggression, moments where her immense power seemed to simmer just beneath the surface, threatening to erupt. She was a creature of immense strength, yes, but also a creature of immense frustration, of suppressed instincts, of a life lived far removed from what nature intended. And as we would soon discover, those suppressed instincts that accumulated frustration were about to boil over. The signs were there. Not flashing red lights, perhaps, but certainly amber warnings, growing steadily brighter with each passing year. Tyke had a history, a rap sheet, if you will, that painted a troubling picture long before Honolulu. These weren't isolated incidents. They were a pattern, a escalating series of outbursts that, in hindsight, screamed for intervention. When then, in 1993, a year before the ultimate tragedy, Tyke was involved in a similar incident in Altoona, Pennsylvania. During a performance, she suddenly bolted, breaking free from her handlers. The scene was less violent than what would later unfold, more chaotic. She wasn't targeting anyone specifically, but her escape caused property damage, fear, and a desperate scramble to recapture an animal of her size. It took hours, a small army of personnel, and considerable effort to bring her back under control. For those who witnessed it, the message was clear. This elephant was unpredictable. This elephant was capable of breaking free. Yet the show went on. The circus business model, driven by schedules and financial pressures, often meant incidents were handled internally, swept under the rug, or attributed to animal temperament. Then just months before Honolulu, another chilling precursor. In North Dakota, Tyke reportedly attacked a trainer. Details are murky, as these things often are in the tightly controlled world of the circus. But the consensus was clear. Tyke was becoming more volatile, her patience thinner, her outbursts more frequent. Was it the endless travel, the confined spaces, the repetitive routines? Was it the subtle, insidious pressures of life in captivity, chipping away at her sanity? Or was it something more direct, more brutal, something that lay hidden behind the curtain? Allegations of abuse followed Tyke throughout her career. Stories of cruel training methods, of physical punishment, of chains and prods designed to instill fear and obedience. While unproven definitively in a court of law at the time, these whispers intensified after the Honolulu incident. Animal rights groups would later highlight these claims as a direct correlation to Tyke's aggression. The argument was simple. An animal subjected to such conditions, a creature constantly pushed beyond its natural limits, would eventually snap. The breaking down of safety wasn't just about a gate left unlatched or a moment of inattention. It was about a fundamental disregard for the well-being of a sentient being. A systemic failure to acknowledge the deep-seated psychological toll of captivity. The warnings weren't just ignored. They were seemingly rationalized away, dismissed as isolated events. But the truth was, the pressure was building. The cracks in the facade were widening, and the stage was being set for an unimaginable horror. August 20th, 1994. A sweltering Saturday afternoon in Honolulu, Hawaii. The Neil S. Blaisdell Center was packed. Families, children, their faces alight with anticipation. The air hummed with excitement, the sweet scent of cotton candy mixing with the earthy smell of the animals. It was matinee time for Circus International, a moment of pure magic for thousands. No one, absolutely no one, could have predicted the terror that was about to unfold. Inside the arena, the lights dimmed for the elephant act. The music swelled, a majestic, soaring tune. Tyke, accompanied by her trainer, Alan Campbell, and groomer, Dallas Beckwith, lumbered into the ring, her massive form a spectacle of grace and power, seemingly under complete control. The routine began, the familiar steps, the practiced gestures. But then something shifted, a subtle tremor, a hesitation in Tyke's movements, a ripple of unease barely perceptible to the audience, but noticed immediately by those closest to her. 2:45 p.m. The performance is in full swing. Tyke is performing a trick, perhaps a stand or a bow. Suddenly, without warning, a low guttural rumble emanates from her chest. Her eyes, usually placid, dart around, showing a flicker of something wild, untamed. Dallas Beckwith, positioned behind her, senses the change. He takes a step back, a veteran's instinct kicking in. 2:46 p.m. It happens in a blur. Tyke whirls around with astonishing speed for an animal of her size. Her trunk, usually used for gentle nudges or picking up props, lashes out. It connects with Dallas Beckwith, a sickening thud. He's thrown through the air like a rag doll, landing hard against the barrier, his body crumpling. A gasp ripples through the audience, then a few isolated screams. They think it's part of the act. A mistake, maybe. 2:47 p.m. Alan Campbell, seeing his groomer down, instinctively rushes forward. He shouts Tyke's name, a command, an appeal. He's trying to regain control, to de-escalate. He reaches for her, perhaps to grab her ear, to guide her back. But Tyke isn't listening. The animal that once obeyed his every command is gone, replaced by a primal force. 2:48 p.m. Tyke turns on Alan. There's a horrifying realization in his eyes, caught on amateur video footage that would later shock the world. His calm demeanor shatters, replaced by raw fear. The elephant, seemingly enraged charges him. He tries to escape, to duck away, but there's nowhere to go. The ring is too small. 2:49 p.m. Tyke's immense head lowers. She hooks him with her tusks, not piercing, but lifting, tossing him. He flies through the air, landing in a heap. Before he can even attempt to rise, Tyke is on him. She stomps, her massive foot coming down with unimaginable force. Once, twice, the screams from the audience are no longer isolated. They are a collective wail of horror. Parents shield their children's eyes. People are scrambling for the exits. 2:50 p.m. The ringmaster, his voice trembling with a desperate urgency, shouts for people to evacuate. Security personnel, unprepared for this scale of attack, rush into the ring, but they are helpless. Tyke, fueled by an unknown fury, is now tearing at the circus equipment, ripping down banners, overturning props. The air is thick with dust, the smell of fear, and the metallic tang of something else. 2:51 p.m. Chaos erupts, the sound of crashing barriers, the splintering of wood. Tyke, her eyes wide and wild, charges the main exit from the arena. The flimsy barriers meant to contain a docile animal are no match for 8,000 pounds of pure, unbridled rage. She bursts through, the sound like a small explosion, and is suddenly, unbelievably, outside. 2:52 p.m. The streets of Honolulu. Cars are driving by, pedestrians are strolling. A moment of normalcy, instantly shattered. Tyke emerges, a monstrous shadow against the bright afternoon sun. People freeze. Then the realization dawns and panic explodes. A roar of confused screams, the screech of tires. The rampage has truly begun. The performance is over. The nightmare has just started. The first 911 calls flooded the Honolulu emergency lines like a dam breaking. Elephant loose. Man down at the circus. It's on the street. It's charging cars. Dispatchers, accustomed to the mundane, were suddenly faced with the surreal. Within minutes, police cruisers, sirens blaring, were converging on the Blaisdell Center. 2:55 p.m., the first officers arrive on scene. What they see is not a contained incident, but a full-blown crisis. Tyke, a gray locomotive of destruction, is stampeding down Kapiolani Boulevard. She's swiping at parked cars with her trunk, sending them skittering. Witnesses are screaming, diving into storefronts, scrambling over fences. It's utter pandemonium. An officer, seeing the sheer size and speed of the animal, issues an immediate urgent call for backup and, crucially, for specialized units. This isn't a domestic disturbance. This is an urban beast, a creature that could crush a vehicle with ease, a creature that had already killed a man. 3 p.m., more police cars arrive, attempting to form a perimeter to contain the animal. But Tyke is relentless. She's moving with a frightening determination, a primal force unleashed. She smashes through a chain-link fence, enters a parking lot, and charges directly at a parked car, flipping it with a shocking display of power. The officers realize quickly that traditional methods of crowd control are useless. Warning shots, tasers? They would be like flicking pebbles at a charging train. 3:05 p.m. Dallas Beckwith, the groomer, is discovered by paramedics. He's gravely injured, barely conscious, bleeding heavily. His body is a roadmap of contusions and broken bones. They rush him to the nearest hospital. Inside the arena, the full horror of Alan Campbell's death is being processed. The scene is grim. Too late for him. 3:10 p.m. Tyke is now in the bustling Kaka'ako district. The streets are a chaotic mix of fleeing civilians and converging police units. An urgent order comes down the radio. Use whatever force necessary to stop the elephant. It's a terrifying directive, a last resort. No one wants to kill an animal, especially not one so iconic. But the immediate threat to public safety outweighs all other concerns. This wasn't a pet. This was a weaponized force of nature, driven by fear, rage, or both. 3:15 p.m. The first shots are fired. Not a single decisive shot, but a volley. Police officers armed with standard-issue handguns begin firing at Tyke. The bullets, designed for human targets, seem to have little immediate effect on the elephant's thick hide. She bellows a sound of pain and continued fury and charges the officers. They scatter, taking cover, narrowly avoiding being trampled. It's a desperate, unequal struggle. The sound of gunfire echoes through the city streets, a terrifying symphony of destruction. Or 3:20 p.m. Tyke is now showing visible signs of distress and injury. Blood smears her gray hide, but her momentum is undiminished. She barrels towards a residential street, a terrifying sight for anyone caught in her path. More officers join the pursuit, firing continuously. The sheer volume of shots, the cacophony of the urban battlefield is overwhelming. Eyewitnesses later describe the scene as something out of a war zone, surreal and horrifying. 3:25 p.m. Mortally wounded, Tyke's movements begin to slow. The countless bullets are finally taking their toll, tearing through her massive body, shutting down her systems. She stumbles, her legs buckling. Her trumpeting calls become weaker, more ragged. The rampage, which lasted just over 30 agonizing minutes, is drawing to a close. 3:27 p.m. With a final, shuddering breath, Tyke collapses onto the asphalt of a Honolulu street. The once mighty creature, a symbol of the wild, a performer of the circus, lies motionless, her eyes staring blankly at the Hawaiian sky. The gunfire ceases. A profound, unsettling silence falls over the scene, broken only by the distant wail of sirens and the heavy breathing of the officers. Their faces pale, their hands shaking. The horror of what just happened and what they had to do begins to sink in. The immediate aftermath of Tyke's rampage was a scene of stunned disbelief. A quiet horror settling over the once chaotic streets of Honolulu. The colossal body of the elephant, lying starkly on the pavement, became an instant, grim landmark. But the ripples of this tragedy extended far beyond that quiet street, echoing across the world and igniting a firestorm of controversy. The formal investigations began immediately. An autopsy was performed on Tyke, revealing the devastating extent of her injuries. A total of 86 bullet wounds were found, a testament to the desperate and prolonged effort required to bring down such a massive animal. The cause of death was attributed to acute circulatory failure due to multiple gunshots. Her brain was examined, searching for any physiological abnormalities that might explain her violent outburst. But nothing conclusive was found. The physical evidence simply confirmed the horrific reality of her final moments. The media, both local and international, descended on Honolulu like vultures. News reports, often accompanied by graphic and disturbing amateur video footage, played on a loop. The image of the rampaging elephant, then the lifeless form on the street, became a haunting symbol. Talk shows debated, news anchors reported, and the public reacted with a mix of shock, grief, and outrage. Circus elephant kills trainer screamed the headlines. But beneath that, a deeper, more unsettling question began to emerge. Who was truly responsible? Legal consequences quickly followed. Lawsuits were filed against every conceivable entity: Circus International, the city and county of Honolulu, the state of Hawaii, even the elephant's owner, John Cuneo Jr. Families of the victims and even some members of the public who experienced severe emotional distress sought justice and compensation. The legal battles would drag on for years, highlighting the complex web of responsibility when a wild animal, purportedly under human control, turns deadly. The question of culpability became a moral and ethical minefield. Was it the handlers for inadequate control, the circus for alleged mistreatment, the city for its emergency response, or was it ultimately a consequence of the inherent cruelty of keeping such a creature in captivity? Public reaction was polarized, passionate, and often furious. Animal rights organizations seized on the Tyke incident as a rallying cry. Groups like PETA and the Humane Society amplified the story, presenting Tyke as a victim, a symbol of the inherent suffering endured by performing animals. They pointed to the alleged history of abuse, the unnatural environment, the physical and psychological toll of circus life. Protests erupted outside circuses across the country, demanding an end to the use of wild animals in entertainment. The footage of Tyke's death became a powerful, disturbing recruitment tool for their cause, forever etching the image of her final moments into the collective consciousness. Internal reports within the circus industry, though rarely made public, undoubtedly addressed the implications of the Tyke incident. It forced a harsh, unwelcome spotlight on their practices, their training methods, and their safety protocols. While some defiantly defended their traditions, others quietly began to reassess. The business model itself came under intense scrutiny. Could circuses truly justify the risks and ethical dilemmas associated with large wild animals, especially when public sentiment was so dramatically shifting? Survivors beyond the immediate victims also carried the scars. Those who witnessed the attack, who ran for their lives, who saw Alan Campbell's brutal end, were left with indelible images and emotional trauma. The memory of the rampaging elephant, the sound of gunshots, the sheer, visceral fear, these were burdens that would not easily fade. The circus, once a symbol of joy and wonder, was now, for many, irrevocably tainted by the ghost of Tyke. The incident became a catalyst, a watershed moment that irrevocably changed the landscape of animal entertainment, propelling the animal rights movement to the forefront and forever altering the public's perception of what was acceptable and what was truly humane. The final curtain had fallen, not just on a performance, but on an era. Tyke was not a monster. She was an elephant, a creature of immense intelligence, power, and perhaps profound despair. Her rampage, born of reasons we can only speculate upon: abuse, fear, the crushing weight of a life denied its true nature, serves as a brutal, unforgettable lesson. We cage the wild, we demand performance, we seek entertainment, and sometimes the wild pushes back. Sometimes the spirit of a creature, confined and tormented, finds its voice not in a trumpeting call of joy, but in a deafening roar of defiance. The world watched Tyke die on a Honolulu street, not knowing that in her final, desperate moments, she was not just fighting for her life, but perhaps for the freedom of all those who would come after her. And the chilling truth remains: when we force the wild to perform, the performance can always, at any moment, turn deadly. The cost, as Alan Campbell discovered, can be everything. And the echoes of Tyke's final scream still haunt the quiet corners where captive eyes watch and wait.